Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing good.
Foreign policy. Like every country in the world, as we discussed, as I have told you, that from the beginning, Pakistan faced different challenges, and Pakistan also faced different challenges in foreign policy perspective, in foreign policy issues. To formulate foreign policy, Pakistan faces such challenges that are as follows, like geographical constraints, like Pakistan is surrounded by very difficult and very strategically important countries in the world. So, relations and the survival instincts, which means that Pakistan has to survive. Pakistan needed a survival. A survival instinct was required for Pakistan to outlive different other countries, to survive the harsh atmosphere, hostility from India and other states. Only the survival instincts can make Pakistan more resilient. That was the thought uh, in the minds of the leaders who were uh, steering the Pakistan's foreign policy in 1947. Thirdly, Pakistan, the roots in the history and current Pakistan. If you are to analyze the current scenario, the current policy, foreign policy of Pakistan, we need to go into the details of the historical perspective, as we discussed. The answer to an alien question of foreign policy is coexistence. Like we discussed isolationism, as we discussed bilateral and multilateral. The another important concept is coexistence. What is the meaning? What is the concept of coexistence? How we can put it into the foreign policy perspective or into the challenges of foreign policy? Why we need coexistence? What is coexistence? The first very important question popped into the mind when we used a word like coexistence. It means that the state or fact of living or existing at the same time or in the same place when two or more than two entities, bodies, countries, states living with each other at the same time in the same place. This is important because without coexistence, we cannot um, we cannot we cannot achieve our goals. We cannot discuss the problems with different countries. That is the reason we need to learn. We need to accept the existence of another country as well. It is very important for Pakistan. It is very important from the beginning, from the historical moment when Pakistan got its independence, that we needed to understand, and the leaders knew this as well, that we needed to understand, we needed to live with India, and that was also the need of the time for Indians to understand that India can also live in this region in South Asia with the existence of Pakistan. In the formative years, in the beginning, India started different movements. India uh, tried to reunite the two countries as the greater India, but the you can say the conspiracy was foiled. The conspiracy was disclosed, and that cannot attain the outcome which the required outcomes. So after that, after different uh, steps, both countries started to realize that the answer lies in coexistence. The major part was played by the nuclear power, being a nuclear power. So when both countries realized that the survival is in the coexistence, without coexistence, we cannot or we may not be able to survive as a country. So then a foreign policy is required, a set of patterns are required, a different code of conducts are required to describe the aspirations and the you can say goals and objectives of one state or another. That if you do this, we can do that. If you try to sabotage the sovereignty, we will not going to tolerate this. So this is why we need to learn coexistence. This is why in the case of any country, the coexistence is the key of a successful foreign policy. So this is, and the other thing is the significance, its significance in foreign policy. As we discussed, without coexistence, without the learning of coexistence, we cannot uh, define the direction to which foreign policy is going towards. So we need, the other question is that why it is important and why it is important in public policy, in the domain of public policy. What is the relationship between foreign policy and public policy? The valuing we value, when we value the importance of our coexistence, we become better placed to generate kindness and compassion towards other people, towards other states. By understanding that we are as deserving of compassion as we are, we can then recognize that they deserve our respect and appreciation as much as we expect theirs. So, this is a two-way process. One country cannot uh, expect from another country to respect its sovereignty when that country itself is violating that. One country cannot expect from the other country to respect the territorial integrity when the other country is violating the territorial country of that country. This is the reason why we need foreign policy. What is this is the significance of foreign policy, because it demarcates, it aligned the rules and the regulations. This is the reason we need to make our foreign policy more established and more accurate, because it makes or enables a country to attain its objectives. Then the orientation towards foreign policy, as Pakistan case, you can learn from its history that how we shifted from one phase to another phase, how we started one phase and then we jumped to another state, how we inclined towards west and then we started to draw our uh, reigns out of the Western interest or the Western politics during the time of Afghan crisis, Soviet Afghan crisis. How that how that uh, incident, how those international different aspects described Pakistan's foreign policy, how we changed from survival to how we started a nuclear quest, how we started the peace for all and the good relation, the struggles, the efforts to make coexistence stance with India as well. So this is the reason we need foreign policy, and this is the reason a country required to uh, introduce or induct foreign coexistence in the domain of foreign policy. Like in this is the example out of the scope of foreign policy and the public policy, because I really want you to tell about the concept of coexistence. So I borrowed this example, I borrowed this allegory from the ecosystem, and I put this in this context so that it may increase your knowledge, it may increase your understanding regarding policy or the importance of coexistence. So the theory of coexistence explains the stable coexistence of species as an interaction between two opposing forces. When two opposing forces are living with each other, when two different species from different habitat are living in a same ecosystem, fitness differences between species, which should drive the best adapted species to exclude others within a particular ecological niche, and stabilizing mechanisms. When both are living with each other, and the the hard one, the resilient one, is constantly replacing the weaker one and making the stable coexistence of species, making both species living in a you can say equilibrium, same as is in the international system. When two opposing forces, when two countries with same objectives start to live with each other in harmony, making a compromise, this makes them uh, very much alike to the other state as well, that make them aligned with the expectations of other states as well. Like state A is conducting a good relations with state B, and state B is not reciprocating that decision, it means that state B is not uh, aligning its interest with state A. And then the equilibrium of coexistence disturbs itself, and that from that moment the foreign policy, a shift in foreign policy emerged. The curve of foreign policy graph changes when this equilibrium disturbed, when a powerful state is not respecting the values of another state, on behest of power. So that is when the coexistence is in question, the entire policy has become the subject of jeopardy.